Hey there, Danavan Hylton, CEO of Hylton Elite Marketing Agency, your full-service sales and marketing firm, recruiting and retaining customers and employees while increasing your presence in the community for employers, workforce development organizations, business chambers, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies. For this to happen, I've found myself having to have a better understanding of human development primarily, and within human development, focusing on personal growth, career growth, business growth, as well as economic growth. And you can also exchange the word growth for development. And so working in both the public and private sector, just doing some research, always growing personally myself, I wanted to read a quick page out of the book, Breaking the Fear Barrier, How Fear Destroys Companies from the Inside Out and What to Do About It, by Tom Rieger. And Tom, if I mispronounce your last name, my deepest apologies. I'll read that title of the book one more time. Breaking the Fear Barrier, How Fear Destroys Companies from the Inside Out and What to Do About It. And even though we're talking about business here, you can also look at this book from a human perspective, meaning breaking the fear barrier, how fear destroys people or individuals from the inside out and what to do about it. And so I think it's very important, especially as we're talking about, in this case, we're talking specifically to business managers or managers of a business, as well as elected officials, because we have to understand that these individuals are in leadership positions representing powerful brands. And as individuals, being employees or constituents, if we ourselves don't have overstanding, then we can find ourselves becoming emotionally involved to the point where we are sabotaging ourselves in our direction because we, again, don't have that overstanding. And so this particular insight here is for you to have more compassion as well as empathy and sympathy for these individuals, and how hopefully these individuals can tap into their personal growth to stand strong in their leadership position and to be an overall complement to the business as well as to the community. So we're going to go ahead and get into this quick page, and I quote, here we go, I quote, "As business grows, their operating model becomes more complex. In a small business, people often share responsibilities or wear multiple hats, but expansion inevitably requires division of responsibilities or a more narrow focus for specific departments. This means specialized job roles. Organizations need to create a human resource department, maybe along with a separate recruiting and training group. They might form a legal department to manage the exposure that comes from increasing the complexity of the business, or to create contracts they now need with a wider range of suppliers and customers. They'll divide up functional responsibilities such as sales versus marketing strategies and tactics. As organizations establish different functions, they have to hire people to lead each one. So managers are put in charge of different areas and given responsibility for the specific area's success. In effect, people are endowed with departments. That's all well and good and necessary. It would be wasteful for a company to re-engineer itself every time a functional area's purview changed or expanded. But when growth is not handled properly, the seeds of bureaucracy are planted, and it all comes back to fear of loss. The person in charge of a particular function will, of course, be judged primarily on how well that function performs. As business grows, other departments will inevitably have increasing demands for customization, exceptions, and quicker turnarounds on the more specialized groups. At the same time, all of these departments will begin to compete for resources, budget, IT initiatives, and headcount. So how do the leaders of these functions survive in the face of all those demands and not lose control? They create rules, standards, and policies to bring order to the growing chaos. Rules are, in essence, walls that provide boundaries within which people must operate. Sometimes, though, the walls get so high that those behind them lose sight of the world outside. When they do, they lose sight of the most important thing, the overall mission and strategy. To them, everything revolves around what's important to the department, their ability to complete their part of the process and check off that one box, regardless of whether or not it supports the larger strategic goals. The ultimate outcome, customer related or financial, may start to become more and more disconnected from everyday work and decision making. End quote. And I wanted to read that page for you again, just to give you an understanding of how great things can also provide challenges if they're not overstood. And I say overstood because when you understand something, if you look at the word stand and understanding, stand simply is a short word for standard. And so standard is the foundation. And foundation, traditionally, if you look at the word principle, which is the foundation of truth, basically you're looking at the principle. So when you stand something, you're looking at the principle, and you want to be able to stand as high as you can over the principle, because the higher over the principle you are, the better the outcome will be. If you are under the principle, a lot of times, with all due respect, you're working out of ignorance. And so it's important to understand, to overstand. Here I go again. Words are powerful. It's important to understand that when you are in business, especially when you first start a business, you're at the seed stage, the first phase of business. And I believe there's 7 stages. So the first stage of business, and that's where the idea of the business is in your mind. And as you go through your business and you're growing, and you get to a point of you're at a phase where you are expanding your business, that means that you've gone into the startup phase, you've gone into the growth phase, you've gone into the mature phase, and now you're hitting the expanding phase. And understand, when you first started off with your business in the conception, it was you by yourself because it was in your mind. And as you continue to grow your business, you may have had family or friends start to join until you got to a point where you were able to have enough working capital to hire employees. But keep in mind, as your business grows, your business now becomes more complex. And as your business becomes more complex, you have to hire more human beings. And as you hire more human beings, you now have to create policies and procedures and standards to take that complexity, which can become chaotic, and bring order to that complexity to ensure that your business, which is one unit, is moving together as a unit, moving forward. And so as you bring on more people, you have to understand that individuals have to be wise enough to understand the leadership position that they're in, and that their leadership position could represent a powerful brand that affects the community and society. And if you're in a leadership position and you don't have an overstanding of fear, then you could bring more harm to not only yourself and your company, but also to your community. What do you mean by more harm? Well, for example, with the fear of loss, because things are now more complex, let's say, for example, that individual is now a manager and they're overseeing a department, and their department has a budget, an annual budget that they receive for expenses and things of that nature. And if you have a fear of loss mentality and you overseeing that department happen to be under budget, you may mess around and say, I'm under budget, I've completed my task, but because I don't want to lose anything, and because I now have an abundance, I'm going to spend the remaining budget just to show the higher decision makers that I need this budget, same amount of budget for next year, because I don't know what's going to happen next year in regards to our business or my department. And so if you end up spending the budget, then the decision makers higher up will say, okay, well, he or she's going to need this same amount of budget next year because they exhausted it this year. But if you go spend under budget, the decision makers may say, well, you know what? They may not need as much next fiscal year because they were able to get the job done under budget. And so just having that fear of loss ends up bringing more detriment to the company, because now the company is giving away more money than they need. And you can see how, because of your will to survive and keep things going, you ultimately have done the organization more harm. And that's a fear of loss mentality. And that's okay to have because that's something that's naturally hardwired into the human being. What I mean by that is we're talking about human development. And when you're talking about human development, you're talking about the laws of biology. And there's only 2 laws. You have survival and reproduction. And in this case, we're talking about survival. How do I keep my job? And how do I ensure that I have the resources necessary to reach the expectations so I can maintain my job? And sometimes even when you do that with good intentions to keep your job, you're actually doing more detriment to the company. And so because of that, you're actually walking through a fear of loss mentality. It could be the same thing with an elected official who's saying, I want to make sure that I'm able to stay here next year or be reelected. So they're willing to go above and beyond to feel like they are staying as a primary pick because they're getting things done behind the scene or maybe doing something underhanded. But ultimately, if you look at the employees and the constituents, the employees are always complaining, ready to quit, looking for another job, and the constituents are always upset and talking bad about the elected official. And I'm not saying these are right, wrong, or indifferent, but what I'm saying is when we have a fear of loss mentality, a false evidence appearing real mentality, you end up bringing more harm than good to not only the business, but also your district if you're an elected official. Again, so how do you combat that? You want to make sure as a manager and elected official that you are focusing on the mission of the organization. That's hard to do because now you're stepping away from yourself and you're becoming servant-minded. And when you focus on the mission, then anything that's going on in your personal department or life becomes irrelevant. And so I would suggest if you want to stay mission focused, do not join an organization if the mission is not designed to complement your community. Because if you focus on the mission and your mission is designed to complement the community, then and you become a service-minded, some kind of way, everything continues and tends to work out the way it's supposed to. And if you're not working with the organization that has a strong mission for the community overall, then you're going to make these same ignorant decisions being a lack of knowledge, a lack of wisdom. It's not your fault. You just don't know. But you're going to end up making these decisions that are not good and self-sabotaging even more on a mission that's not positive. And so ultimately, you want to make sure you're getting into an organization with a strong mission, and you want to make sure that you're focusing on the mission to ensure that you are combating and finding a solution to that false evidence appearing real barrier. So bringing it back to the complexity and how growth happens. When you look at growth, things become more complex. Through complexity, there's more chaos. And so in order to keep that chaos from growing out of control, you create standards, policies, and procedures. And those policies and procedures and standards are designed to bring order. And so therefore, I can see where the term order out of chaos is created, because even though it's growth, there's also challenges within that growth. And so when you look at that order out of chaos, it's kind of no different than, it makes you think about a tribe. A small tribe starts off with a husband and wife, some kids, and I'm assuming, if you want to go there, Adam and Eve. I'm assuming Adam and Eve had children. They had to have female children at one point as well. And I know we knew Cain and Abel, but I'm assuming they have female children as well, because Cain and Abel had to populate the world as well. And so you end up getting to a point where the mother and father and the brothers and sisters and all that are cohabitating and making children until you get to a point where that tribe has now become, over time, a large influential kingdom. And even though the bloodline is still the same through the growth, the tribe has now become more complex because now it's a kingdom and there's more people. And so through that complexity, which has possibly created chaos, you need to have that order created. And so therefore, you want to make sure that as that order is created, that you as a human being are personally developing yourself to prepare yourself for that leadership position. Because when you're in that leadership position, you're going to represent some powerful brands that are doing some powerful things in both the local community and maybe going as far as globally. And a lot of individuals may get upset with the brand and what the brand is not doing in the community. But understand, at the end of the day, it's the human being that is accountable to manage the department for that brand. And so we still have to be accountable ourselves. So if you want to point a finger at somebody, three fingers are coming back to you, because we're the human being that has to be accountable. And so this is a great insight for, I feel, business managers or managers of a business, as well as elected officials, as well as employees and constituents, because employees and constituents can get upset and complain and talk bad and be ready to quit, walk out, vote somebody out. But you got to understand, out of compassion and empathy, that the individual from childhood was never taught, how to grow personally and how to combat fear. Because I wasn't taught. And it wasn't until I became older and mature that I said, you know what? I need to know thyself and become and grow personally. And as you do those things, you can walk with a leadership mentality and go into any position and represent that brand the best way, both within and without. And I feel that's the only true way for a business to shine, and the only true way for our communities to shine. Is not the community, is us as human beings to get in touch with ourselves personally and grow. And I feel that this book, Breaking the Fear Barrier, How Fear Destroys Companies from the Inside Out and What to Do About It, by Tom Rieger, was a great topic of discussion. So I wanted to read a page out of that. I'm going to make sure that I post a link to where you can buy the book. Click the link and buy the book from the link that I post if you don't mind. I thank you in advance for doing so. Thank you in advance for sharing this post, this video, and this message as well. And I also thank you for liking and subscribing to our channel. Danavan Hylton, CEO of Hylton Elite Marketing Agency, full service sales and marketing business. And my business is designed to recruit and retain customers and employees and to increase the presence of the community, of the clients that I represent in the community. But ultimately, my role is to make sure that you are personally developed so that you can grow in your career, so that you can grow in your business, so that your business can grow, and so that your business is a complement to the community so the community can grow. And what I mean by grow is economic growth, because your economic growth indirectly correlates to your personal growth. And there's only so far you can go from the education institution and having the financial resources. At some point, we have to be accountable personally and mentally to go beyond the education and the finance and take our economy and communities to the next level. Danavan Hylton, CEO of Hylton Elite Marketing Agency, www.e1connect.com. And remember, we're more than just marketing.